Grandma, my parents will take your money after the party today, whispered my 9-year-old grandson, and his words struck like thunder, shattering the illusion of family love. I, a trusting grandmother who'd always supported them, left early, hiding my shock behind a mask of fatigue. But what I did next, a cunning plan for revenge for their betrayal, shocked everyone. I beat them at their own game, and they'll never forget it. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. I know what you're thinking, Mom, but hear me out. Chloe's voice cracked through the phone, cutting through the Saturday morning quiet like a rusty blade. I nearly dropped my mug. 7 a.m. Calls weren't Chloe's style, especially not with that nervous tremor I recognized from her teenage years when she'd wrecked my car. What sounds strange, dear? I settled back into my kitchen chair, watching steam rise from my coffee while morning light painted golden squares across yesterday's unread newspaper. Well, Mark really we both think you should definitely come to Liam's birthday party today. The words tumbled out too fast, like she'd rehearsed them but forgotten the rhythm. Something cold settled in my chest. Since when did they need to convince me to see my grandson? Chloe, when have I ever missed one of Liam's birthdays? No, that's not what I meant. A pause. I heard what sounded like Mark's voice in the background, sharp and insistent. It's just that Mark's been planning this for weeks, and he specifically asked me to call and make sure you're coming. I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the cream swirl into tiny hurricanes. Mark specifically asking the same Mark who usually treated my presence like a necessary inconvenience. That is thoughtful of him. Yeah, he's really excited about it. Chloe's laugh sounded forced, metallic. Party starts at 2, but maybe you could come a little early. We wanted to talk about some family stuff. The spoon clinked against the mug as I set it down. Family stuff? In 4 years of widowhood, family stuff had never required special conversations. What kind of family stuff? Oh, just planning things, future things. Mark has some ideas about how we can all be more involved with each other. I walked to the window, phone pressed to my ear, watching Mr. Henderson across the street, water his flower boxes, Mark with ideas about family involvement, the man who'd spent the holiday dinner last year checking his phone every 5 minutes. That sounds nice, Chloe. I kept my voice level, but my businesswoman's instincts were screaming. 31 years of reading people across conference tables had taught me when someone was selling something they did not believe in themselves. Great. So you will be there early, maybe around 1:30. I glanced at the refrigerator where Liam's latest drawing hung next to my shopping list. A crooked house with stick figures labeled Grandma, Mommy, Daddy, and Me in green crayon. That little boy was the brightest spot in my world since David died. Of course, I'll be there early. I wouldn't miss Liam's day for anything. Perfect. And Mom, Chloe's voice dropped lower. Just keep an open mind about what we want to discuss, okay? It's all about making sure everyone's taken care of. The line went dead before I could ask what she meant by everyone's taken care of. I stared at the phone for a long moment, then set it on the counter next to my untouched newspaper. Something wasn't right. Chloe's voice had carried that same guilty undertone I remembered from when she was 9 and had borrowed money from David's wallet for candy. But this felt bigger than childhood mischief. I poured fresh coffee and tried to shake off the unease. Maybe Mark genuinely wanted to improve family relationships. Maybe I was reading too much into a simple invitation. But as I sat back down with my coffee, I could not stop thinking about that phrase, making sure everyone's taken care of. In my experience, when people started talking about taking care of everyone, they usually meant taking care of themselves first. I looked at Liam's drawing again and smiled despite my concerns. Whatever Chloe and Mark had planned to discuss, it could wait until after I'd celebrated my grandson's 9th birthday. Some things were more important than adult complications. Still, I made a mental note to listen carefully to whatever they want to talk about. Minutes later, I stood in my bedroom closet, staring at blouses David would never see me wear again. The blue blouse brought back his funeral, how Mark had whispered about all this space while we buried my husband. Even then, Something in his tone had felt calculating. I pulled the blouse from its hanger and caught my reflection in the mirror. $70,000. That's what I'd given them over the past 4 years. Mortgage payments, car loans, Liam's private school tuition. David would have called it excessive, but he'd also understood that Liam deserved better than his parents could provide alone. My wallet sat heavy in my back pocket as I dressed. 3 credit cards maxed out for Chloe's emergencies, the urgent transmission repair that turned into a full engine rebuild. Mark's temporary need for grocery money that became a monthly expectation. Each request delivered with Chloe's shame-faced explanations and Mark's perfectly timed gratitude. Walking to the kitchen for my keys, I passed the refrigerator where Liam's latest drawing hung beside my grocery list. He'd drawn our last fishing trip, 2 stick figures by a blue crayon lake, both smiling. "Best day ever, Grandma," written in green marker along the bottom. That's when Mark's recent suggestion hit me with fresh clarity. 3 weeks ago, standing in this exact spot, he looked around my kitchen and said, "Evelyn, don't you think this house is getting too big for you? There are lovely assisted living communities where you wouldn't have to worry about maintenance." Chloe had quickly changed the subject to Liam's softball season, but Mark's eyes had lingered on my granite countertops, the expensive appliances David and I had chosen together, the same calculating look he'd worn at the funeral. I grabbed my car keys from the counter, remembering David's last coherent words. "Promise me you'll always take care of Liam, but watch Chloe carefully. She's weak, and weak people make dangerous choices when someone strong is whispering in their ear." At the time, I'd thought she meant his drinking buddies or get-rich schemes. Now, I wondered if David had seen something in Mark that I'd missed, the way he'd started every conversation about money with Liam's needs, making me feel selfish for questioning the expenses. The garage door opener hummed as morning light streamed across my BMW. David's car still sat in his spot, covered and pristine. I'd kept making payments on it for months after his death, unable to admit he was really gone. Maybe that is what they were counting on, my inability to say no when it came to family. The grandmother who'd rather pay than disappoint, who'd rather trust than investigate. But 41 years in construction had taught me to check foundations before building anything important. I backed out of the driveway slowly, watching my house shrink in the rearview mirror. By tonight, after whatever conversation Chloe and Mark had planned, I suspected I'd see everything differently. For now, I needed to buy my grandson a birthday present, something special, perhaps the last gift I'd give him before everything changed. The Dubai Mall buzzed with Saturday morning energy as I parked near the main entrance. 8:15, and already families were streaming toward the toy stores, perfect timing for Liam's gifts. The Lego architecture section drew me immediately. Liam had been fascinated by buildings since his school field trip to the Burj Khalifa last month. The Statue of Liberty set caught my eye, detailed enough to challenge his growing skills, but not overwhelming. $180 seemed reasonable for something that would occupy his curious mind for weeks. "Excellent choice, ma'am." The young clerk smiled as she rang up my purchase. "My son loves this series. Would you like gift wrapping?" "Please. It is for my grandson's 9th birthday. Next stop, sporting goods." Liam had mentioned wanting a real bicycle, not the tiny pink thing he'd outgrown. The specialized model displayed near the window looked perfect. Lightweight frame, handbrakes he could manage, reflective strips for safety. $320, but his delighted face would be worth every penny. Loading the bicycle box into my SUV, I checked my watch. 9:10. Plenty of time for one more stop. Evelyn, what a lovely surprise. Daniel Henderson materialized beside my car, clutching a shopping bag from the bookstore. My neighbor of 16 years looked genuinely pleased to see me, his silver hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. "Daniel, good morning. Starting your weekend shopping early?" "Oh, you know me. I like beating the crowds." He gestured toward the mall entrance. "Though I suppose you are here for birthday preparations." Chloe mentioned Varel. "Im's party when I saw her last week. He mentioned it." I closed the SUV's rear hatch, curious. "Where did you run into her?" "City Center, actually. Tuesday morning, I think it was. Mark was with her, and they were coming out of Royal Bank of Canada with quite a stack of papers. Daniel chuckled, looked very official and serious. Probably refinancing something the way young people do these days. Tuesday. 4 days ago. Chloe hadn't mentioned any banking business during her nervous phone call this morning. But then again, why would she? People handled financial matters all the time without broadcasting details. Probably just routine business, I said, shifting my shopping bags to my other hand. Of course, dear. None of my concern, anyway. Daniel patted my arm affectionately. Well, I had better let you finish your shopping. Give my love to that sweet grandson of yours. He bustled away toward the bookstore, leaving me standing beside my car with a vague sense of unease. Banking business on Tuesday, nervous phone call on Saturday. The timing felt oddly coincidental, but then again, Chloe always seemed to be juggling some financial crisis or another. I shook off the feeling and headed toward the florist shop near the mall's east entrance. Mark had always appreciated flowers, and white roses would make a thoughtful gesture for the host of Liam's party. The florist, a middle-aged man with dirt under his fingernails, wrapped a dozen long-stemmed roses in silver paper with practiced efficiency. "These are beautiful," he said, adjusting the ribbon. "Special occasion. My grandson's birthday party. They are for his father." How thoughtful. He'll love them. $28 for flowers that would wilt in a week, but Mark's pleased expression would be worth the expense. These small gestures mattered in maintaining family harmony, especially when underlying tensions existed. By 9:30, my SUV was loaded with cages that represented nearly $600 of birthday celebration. The Lego set, bicycle, roses, and the card I'd selected, each item chosen with Liam's happiness in mind. This was what grandmothers did. They spoiled their grandchildren shamelessly and enjoyed every moment of it. Driving home through Saturday morning traffic, I found myself thinking about Daniel's casual observation. Chloe and Mark at the bank with papers, serious expressions, official business that Chloe had not bothered mentioning. But then again, married couples handled countless administrative tasks without involving extended family. Insurance updates, mortgage refinancing, college savings accounts for Liam. Any number of legitimate reasons could explain their city center visit. Still, as I turned into my driveway, I could not quite dismiss the small voice in my head that wondered why Chloe had sounded so nervous this morning, if everything was truly as routine as it appeared. After wrapping Liam's gifts and grabbing a quick lunch, I arrived at Chloe's house precisely at 2:00. The front door opened before I could ring the bell. Evelyn. Mark practically sang my name, his arms spreading wide as if we had not seen each other in months rather than weeks. "You look absolutely wonderful today." This enthusiasm felt foreign. Mark usually offered a polite smile and quick hug before disappearing into kitchen duties. Today he touched my arm twice while speaking, his eyes bright with an energy I'd never seen directed at me before. "Thank you, Mark. The party looks lovely." I stepped inside carrying the wrapped bicycle box and gift bag containing the Lego set. Colorful streamers hung from every doorway and balloon clusters filled each corner, far more elaborate than previous birthday celebrations. "Mom, there she is." Chloe appeared from the living room, her voice carrying across the house like a carnival barker's. "Come meet Mia from work." "Mia, this is my amazing mother I've told you so much about." Amazing mother. Chloe's workplace conversations about me typically focused on my old-fashioned business methods or retirement stubbornness. But today she clapped my shoulder with theatrical enthusiasm, her laugh echoing too loudly in the decorated hallway. The living room buzzed with familiar faces. The Wilsons from next door chatted near the fireplace, while Mr. Smith sat carefully on the couch, observing everything with sharp eyes. Carla and Leo Martinez helped their daughter Tina arrange party games on the coffee table. "Grandma!" Liam ran toward me, his genuine smile cutting through the artificial atmosphere like sunlight. He wrapped his arms around my waist, and for a moment the world felt normal again. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." I handed him the gift bag. This one first, then the big surprise. He unwrapped the Lego architecture set with careful fingers, his eyes widening at the Statue of Liberty image on the box. But when he looked up to thank me, something flickered across his face. A shadow of sadness that vanished when Mark approached. "Isn't Grandma generous, honey? Say thank you properly." "Thank you, Grandma. It's really cool." Liam's voice carried genuine appreciation mixed with something else. Guilt, worry. A 9-year-old shouldn't sound so burdened during his own birthday party. Chloe guided me toward the kitchen where Mia Davidson nursed a beer and made small talk about car sales. The conversation flowed normally enough, but Chloe kept interjecting with unnecessary compliments about my business wisdom and family leadership. Each comment felt rehearsed, like lines from a script she'd memorized poorly. "Evelyn knows everything about building successful relationships," Chloe announced to Mia. "She's taught me so much about trust and family loyalty." Trust and family loyalty. Strange topics for a casual party conversation, especially delivered with Chloe's current manic intensity. Mia nodded politely, clearly uncomfortable with Chloe's excessive praise of her own mother. Mark reappeared with a plate of appetizers, positioning himself between me and the other guests. "Evelyn, you simply must try these canapes. I made them, especially thinking of your sophisticated tastes." My sophisticated taste? Mark had never paid attention to my food preferences beyond ensuring adequate quantities appeared at family gatherings. Now he hovered beside me, refilling my wine glass before it emptied and asking about my comfort level every few minutes. From across the room, I watched Liam opening cards from school friends. His movements seemed mechanical, polite but distant. When Tina Martinez asked about his new Lego set, he nodded and smiled appropriately, but his responses lacked the genuine excitement I'd expected. "He's growing up so fast," Mr. Smith observed, settling beside me on the couch. "Such a thoughtful child. He asked me last week if grandparents and parents ever disagree about important decisions." My wine glass paused halfway to my lips. "What did you tell him?" "That families work through differences with love and honesty." Mr. Smith studied Liam with concerned eyes, though he seemed troubled by something beyond normal childhood worries. Across the room, Chloe and Mark exchanged a quick glance, the kind of wordless communication that suggested coordination. They'd been doing that all afternoon, I realized. Brief eye contact, subtle nods, perfectly timed interruptions when conversations approached certain topics. The afternoon stretched on with forced merriment and careful choreography. Every smile felt calculated, every laugh slightly too loud, every gesture of family affection performed for an audience. Only Liam's behavior toward me remained authentic, though shadowed by whatever burden he carried, as the party wound toward its conclusion and guests began gathering their belongings. Chloe caught my attention with an overly casual gesture. "Mom, stick around after everyone leaves, okay? Mark and I have been looking forward to that family chat we mentioned." The artificial cheerfulness began weighing on me like humidity before a storm. I excused myself with a polite smile, mentioning the bathroom down the hallway. Mark jumped up immediately, offering directions I did not need, his concern feeling rehearsed rather than genuine. Walking away from the party noise, I noticed Liam watching me from beside the gift table. Something in his expression, worry mixed with determination, made me pause. When I reached the hallway lined with family photos, small footsteps followed behind me. "Grandma." His voice barely rose above a whisper. I turned to find him glancing back toward the living room, ensuring we were alone. The birthday boy, who should have been glowing with excitement, looked instead like he carried the weight of the world on 9-year-old shoulders. "What is it, sweetheart?" I knelt to his eye level, recognizing the serious expression he'd inherited from David. "You look troubled." He bit his lower lip, a gesture that reminded me painfully of his grandfather during difficult conversations. "I need to tell you something important about Mom and Dad." My chest tightened. "What about them, honey? They're planning to take your money tonight." The words tumbled out in a rush as if he had been rehearsing them. "After everyone goes home, I heard them talking last night when I was supposed to be sleeping." The hallway seemed to tilt slightly. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself, fighting to keep my expression calm for his sake. "What exactly did you hear?" Dad said, "You have too much money for an old woman living alone." Liam's voice dropped even lower. He told Mom they were going to fix that problem tonight. Mom seemed scared, but Dad said the papers from the bank would make everything legal. Papers from the bank. Tuesday's visit that Daniel Henderson had mentioned suddenly made terrible sense. My business instincts, dormant for years, roared back to life with cry. Stalline clarity. Did they say anything else? I asked gently, though my mind raced with implications I hoped a 9-year-old could not understand. Mom kept saying, "What if she finds out?" And Dad said it would be too late by then. Tears welled in his eyes. "Grandma, I don't want them to take your money. You are the only one who really listens to me." I pulled him into a fierce hug, feeling his small body trembling against mine. David's grandson carrying adult secrets that no child should bear. The betrayal cut deeper, knowing they'd planned this with an earshot of innocent ears. "Listen to me carefully," I whispered into his hair. "You did the right thing telling me. But we need to keep this our secret for now, okay? Can you do that?" He nodded against my shoulder. "Are you going to stop them?" "Yes, sweetheart. I'm going to handle everything." I held him at arm's length, making sure he could see the certainty in my eyes. "But we need to go back to your party now and act normal. Can you be brave for me?" "I think so." He wiped his nose with the back of his hand. "Will you still love me if Mom and Dad get mad?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "Liam, nothing your parents do could ever change how much I love you. Nothing. Do you understand?" Relief flooded his face, the first genuine smile I had seen from him all afternoon. "I love you too, Grandma." Hand in hand, we walked back toward the party sounds, but everything had changed in those few whispered minutes. The daughter I'd raised, the son-in-law I'd supported, the family I'd trusted with my heart. All of it now viewed through the lens of calculated betrayal. As we rejoined the celebration, I caught Chloe's eyes across the room. She smiled and waved, the same false enthusiasm that had puzzled me earlier. Now I understood exactly what that performance was designed to accomplish. Returning to the party felt like walking onto a stage where everyone else had forgotten they were acting. I settled back into conversations with the natural ease that 41 years of business negotiations had taught me. While internally cataloging every glance between Chloe and Mark with devastating new clarity, Mr. Smith was discussing his garden when I noticed Chloe checking her watch for the third time in 10 minutes. Mark appeared beside her immediately, their brief eye contact now obviously coordinated rather than coincidental. They were managing me, I realized, ensuring I stayed comfortable, engaged, and most importantly present for whatever they had planned after the guests departed. "Evelyn, how about some more wine?" Mark's hand touched my arm with practiced concern. "You look a bit pale. Are you feeling all right?" Pale? Yes, I probably was. Learning that your family planned to steal your life's work might do that to a person. But I managed a tired smile that wasn't entirely manufactured, just a slight headache. "But I am fine." His expression shifted almost imperceptibly, the kind of micro-expression I had learned to read in boardroom adversaries. Relief mixed with calculation. A tired, slightly unwell grandmother would be easier to manipulate than an alert one. For the next hour, I played my part perfectly. Gracious grandmother, generous family matriarch, aging woman, perhaps not quite as sharp as she once was. I accepted their attentions, praised their hospitality, and observed their increasingly obvious coordination with the detached interest of studying a chess opponent's strategy. Chloe kept steering conversations away from financial topics. Whenever guests mentioned the economy or retirement planning, Mark redirected discussions about my house, my health, my future living arrangements. They were managing information flow, ensuring nothing conflicted with whatever narrative they'd constructed for tonight's important family discussion. Around 5:30, as afternoon shadows lengthened and guests began collecting their belongings, I announced my intention to leave. "I think I should head home early. This headache isn't improving." The effect was immediate. Chloe and Mark exchanged a look of genuine alarm. "Mom, wait." Chloe moved to block my path to the door. "We really wanted to talk about those important family matters we mentioned. Remember? You promised to stay after everyone left. Perhaps another time, I said, maintaining the weary grandmother persona. I really need to rest. But Evelyn. Mark stepped closer, his voice taking on urgent undertones. We have something special planned for tonight, something we have been preparing for weeks, something they'd been preparing for weeks. The bank visit Daniel Henderson witnessed. Legal documents, plans that required my presence and cooperation. I could see the desperation creeping into their performance as their carefully orchestrated timeline threatened to collapse. I am sure it can wait until tomorrow, I replied gently. Family isn't going anywhere. Chloe's face flushed. Actually, Mom, there are some time-sensitive issues we need to discuss. Financial matters that cannot wait. Financial matters that can't wait. How interesting that Chloe would phrase it exactly that way. I filed the comment away with all the other intelligence I'd gathered throughout this surreal afternoon. Tomorrow, dear, I promise. I turned toward Liam, who had been watching our exchange with worried eyes. Kneeling to his level, I pulled him into what might be our last innocent embrace before everything changed. Thank you for the most wonderful birthday party, sweetheart. Thank you for my presents, Grandma. His small arms tightened around my neck. I love you so much. I love you too. More than you'll ever know, I whispered against his ear. Quiet enough that only he could hear every thing will be okay. Standing, I felt Chloe's hand on my shoulder, heavier than necessary, almost restraining. Mom, please just give us an hour. 1 hour to discuss these important family decisions. I looked into my daughter's eyes and saw not the girl I'd raised, but a desperate woman whose greed had overwhelmed whatever love remained. The realization cut deeper than I'd expected, but my voice remained steady. Another time, Chloe, I need to go home now. Walking to my car while they watched from the doorway, Mark whispering urgently in Chloe's ear, both of them radiating frustrated tension. I felt the weight of performance finally lifting from my shoulders. Alone in my BMW, I sat for a moment in their driveway, processing the magnitude of what had just occurred. My family had planned to rob me. Tonight with legal documents and careful preparation. Starting the engine, I pulled away from the house where I had celebrated what might be my last normal family gathering. Inside my house, the silence felt different than it had that morning, no longer peaceful, pregnant with purpose. I walked directly to my home office, the room where I'd built my construction business from a single truck and stubborn determination. Years of important documents lived in the wall, safe behind David's portrait as I spun the combination lock. Muscle memory from decades of business dealings guided my fingers. 1959, David's birthday. The irony wasn't lost on me that his memory would help me protect what we had built together. The documents told a story I'd been too trusting to read properly. Bank statements revealing the pattern of financial requests that had escalated from hundreds to thousands over 4 years. Investment portfolios worth far more than Chloe or Mark realized. Property deeds for rental properties they did not know existed, and most importantly, records of every payment I'd made to support their lifestyle. 247 individual transactions. I documented everything with the methodical precision that had made my business successful. Mortgage payments, car repairs, medical bills, private school tuition for Liam, each payment justified by some family emergency or opportunity that seemed reasonable at the time. Sitting at my desk with David's photo watching from the bookshelf, I finally saw the manipulation clearly. The escalating requests had been conditioning, training me to say yes to increasingly larger amounts. Mark's suggestions about assisted living were not concern for my welfare. They were reconnaissance for tonight's planned theft. Every mortgage payment, every tuition check, I said aloud to David's photograph. They've been planning this for months. My phone sat silent on the desk. Chloe and Mark would be scrambling right now, trying to figure out how to proceed without me present for their important family discussion. The thought gave me a grim satisfaction. Opening my business card file, I found Julia Miller's personal number. 21 years of friendship and professional respect with the Vice President of Royal Bank of Canada. Julia would remember the careful, detail-oriented contractor who'd never missed a payment or broken a promise. More importantly, she'd understand exactly what legal documents obtained under false pretenses actually meant. The clock showed 9:30 p.m., too late for business calls, but I made a note for tomorrow morning. First priority, understanding exactly what papers Chloe and Mark had obtained and how to neutralize their legal effectiveness. Next, I reviewed my will and trust documents, standard arrangements that left everything to Chloe with provisions for Liam's education and future, written when I still believed my daughter possessed integrity and love for her family rather than simply greed for our money. Those documents would need immediate revision. Caleb Davis had notarized most of my legal paperwork over the years, independent, discreet, and unconnected to any bank where Chloe and Mark might have allies. Another call for tomorrow morning, spreading the investment statements across my desk like battle plans. I calculated my actual net worth for the first time in years. $0.3 million in liquid assets, plus 3 rental properties, plus this house with no mortgage. Far more than Chloe and Mark suspected, and certainly more than they could steal in one evening's legal maneuvering. But this was not about money. This was about justice for a 9-year-old boy whose parents were willing to traumatize him with adult secrets. This was about punishment for adults who'd exploit an elderly woman's love for her family. This was about ensuring that betrayal came with consequences. David's voice echoed from our last conversation. Watch Chloe carefully. Weak people make dangerous choices when someone strong is whispering in their ear. Now I understood. Mark had been whispering for 4 years, and Chloe had chosen greed over family loyalty at every turn. My phone rang suddenly, jarring me from planning. Chloe's name appeared on the caller ID. I let it ring. Sunday morning brought clarity that a restless night had failed to provide. After finally falling asleep near dawn, I woke with my businesswoman's instincts fully engaged and a specific plan for me. Over coffee in my home office, I opened my business contact file to Julia Miller's personal number. 9 talk seemed appropriate for calling an old friend about financial matters. Julia and I had maintained our friendship through 21 years of loans, investments, and the gradual success of price construction. She would trust a call from me, especially about portfolio management. Julia, sorry to bother you on Sunday morning, I began when she answered. I have been reviewing my investment portfolio and wanted to get your thoughts on some consolidation ideas. Evelyn, always good to hear from you. Her voice carried genuine warmth. What is on your mind? I'm considering simplifying my accounts, maybe centralizing everything for easier management. What are current banking policies on financial assistance programs? Well, there are several options depending on your needs. Are you thinking about automated services or more comprehensive management assistance? Perfect opening. Actually, I have been wondering about power of attorney arrangements, conservatorship options. Had any clients dealing with those recently? Julia paused, and I could almost hear her considering confidentiality boundaries. Funny you should ask. Just last week, I had a couple inquiring about guardianship procedures for an elderly family member. My coffee cup stopped halfway to my lips. Oh, complex process, I imagine. Actually, they seemed quite prepared. Had done considerable research on conservatorship requirements, documentation timelines. Very thorough people. Very thorough. My daughter and son-in-law had researched exactly how to steal my independence with legal precision. That's thoughtful of them to help their family. They were asking specific questions about mental competency evaluations, financial management documentation, timelines for court approval. Julia's professional knowledge was exactly what I needed. They understood the terminology better than most attorneys I've worked with. Mental competency evaluations, court approval timelines. They'd planned to have me declared incompetent and seize control of everything I'd spent 41 years building. The scope of their betrayal kept expanding beyond what I would. Mental competency evaluations, documentation ready, medical opinions prepared, emergency procedures. Chloe and Mark had not just planned to rob me. They had engineered a complete legal framework to justify stealing my life. The phone rang suddenly, startling me from my thoughts. Chloe's name appeared on the caller ID again. This time I answered. Hello? I answered the phone with deliberate weariness, as if the effort of reaching across my desk required considerable energy. Mom, thank goodness. I was worried sick about you leaving early yesterday. Chloe's voice carried what sounded like genuine concern, though I now recognized the calculation beneath it. Are you feeling all right? Oh, Chloe. I let my voice trail off slightly, as if gathering thoughts had become difficult. I have been having these terrible headaches, hard to concentrate on anything. That does not sound good. Maybe we should have you checked by a doctor. Mark and I could drive you to the clinic this afternoon. Perfect. They were accelerating their timeline exactly as I would have hoped after disrupting their original plan. That is very thoughtful of you both. I've been feeling so confused lately. Don't worry, Mom. We will take care of everything. We'll be over in about an hour. Okay. After hanging up, I spent 30 minutes preparing for the performance of my life. I mused my hair slightly, put on an old cardigan that made me look frailer, and practiced the slower, more hesitant movements of genuine elderly confusion. When their car pulled into my driveway, I was ready. Evelyn, we brought some papers that might help with your situation, Mark announced as they settled into my living room. He'd brought a leather portfolio that looked expensive and professional, the kind lawyers used for important documents. Papers? I blinked at him with what I hoped appeared to be genuine bewilderment. What kind of papers? Chloe leaned forward, her expression earnest. Mom, we have been researching ways to help you manage things better. Your finances, medical decisions, that sort of thing. Manage? I am not sure I understand. I rubbed my temples as if the conversation was causing physical pain. Everything seems so complicated these days. Mark opened the portfolio with practiced efficiency. These documents would give us power of attorney to help with your banking, bills, medical appointments. Think of it as having a backup system. The forms looked professionally prepared with highlighted sections marked for my signature. Someone had invested serious money in legal consultation for this theft. I stared at the papers as if they contained hieroglyphics. It is also overwhelming, I murmured. I used to understand these things better. That is exactly why we need to do this now. Mark pressed gently. Before things get more confusing for you. Chloe shifted uncomfortably. Mom, are you sure you're okay? You seem really different today. I looked at her with what I hoped was confused gratitude. Different? I do not feel different. Just tired all the time. These headaches make it hard to think clearly. Mark and Chloe exchanged a glance, the same coordinated communication I had noticed at the party, but now I understood its purpose. They were evaluating whether I was impaired enough to sign documents without fully understanding their implications. Evelyn, these papers would just make it easier for us to help you, Mark continued. You would not have to worry about managing everything alone. I suppose that would be nice, I said slowly, picking up one of the documents with trembling hands. But this is such a big decision. My head is pounding, trying to think it through. Of course it is a big decision, Chloe said quickly. Take your time. Mark's patience looked more strained, though. Don't you think it would be easier with family help? You trust us, do you not? Of course I trust you. Your family. I set the papers down carefully. But could I maybe sleep on it? Decide tomorrow when I am thinking clearer? These headaches make everything so fuzzy. Chloe and Mark looked at each other again, and I could see Mark's frustration barely contained beneath his caring facade. Sure, Mom. We will come by tomorrow morning, and you can sign them then. After they left, I allowed myself to slump in my chair, dropping the performance for the first time in hours. The documents they had left behind told the complete story. Power of attorney forms that would give them control over my finances, medical decisions, and living arrangements. Everything Julia had warned me about, laid out in legal language designed to steal my life. Hours later, I sat in my home office, reviewing my notes from Chloe and Mark's visit, like a general planning a campaign. Their power of attorney documents lay spread across my desk, professional forms that would have given them complete control over my finances, medical decisions, and living arrangements. Every signature line highlighted in yellow, every witness requirement meticulously marked. They had done their homework, but they'd forgotten I'd spent 41 years doing mine. Caleb Davis answered on the second ring. Evelyn, good evening. What can I do for you? Caleb, I need notary services tomorrow morning for some family financial documents. Could you come to my house around 10 on twag? Of course. What type of documents are we dealing with? I chose my words carefully. Power of attorney forms. It might be a somewhat sensitive family matter, so I'd appreciate your professional discretion. You know you can count on that. I'll bring my seal and journal. Perfect. Caleb had notarized dozens of contracts for my construction business over the years. He'd recognize irregular pressure tactics or coercion immediately. It was part of his professional training. Next call, Julia Miller. Julia, could you stop by tomorrow morning around 10 on ta? I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, and I would like to review my portfolio in detail. Certainly, Evelyn. After what we discussed about financial management assistance, I think a thorough review would be wise. Excellent. It might be educational. Julia chuckled. I'll bring the necessary paperwork. See you at 10. Educational indeed. Julia would witness whatever Chloe and Mark planned to do, and as a bank vice president, she'd understand exactly what she was seeing. More importantly, her presence would add legal weight to any documentation of their behavior. Final call, Chloe. I let my voice carry the tremulous uncertainty I'd performed that afternoon. Chloe, I've been thinking about those papers you brought. You were right. I do need help managing things. Mom, that's wonderful. Mark will be so relieved. We can come over first thing tomorrow morning. I've arranged for a notary to make everything proper and legal. 10 o'clock sharp. Perfect. And Mom, thank you for trusting us with this. Trust. The word sat bitter in my mouth, but I managed to sound grateful. You are my family. Of course, I trust you. After hanging up, I walked to the window overlooking my backyard. David's rose garden needed attention, another task I had been managing alone since his death. Tomorrow would determine whether I'd continue managing it as a free woman or watch it wither from some assisted living facility while Chloe and Mark divided our life's work. I pulled out a white legal pad and wrote down the sequence of events I expected tomorrow. 9:45 a.m. Caleb arrives, sets up notary materials. 10 a.m. Julia arrives with portfolio documents. 10:05 a.m. Chloe and Mark arrive expecting easy document signing. 10 o'clock a.m. Professional witnesses observe their manipulation tactics. 10:15 a.m. Truth emerges. The beautiful irony was not lost on me. They'd researched how to steal my independence through legal procedures, but they'd forgotten that legal procedures require proper witnesses and documentation. Tomorrow, those same requirements would expose their betrayal. 20 miles across town, Chloe was probably explaining to Mark how cooperative I had sounded, how the notary would make everything official, how close they were to controlling millions of dollars. They'd celebrate tonight, confident that a confused old woman had finally accepted their help. They had no idea they were walking into a trap set by the same business mind that had built what they were trying to steal. I looked at Liam's drawing on my refrigerator, our stick figure family standing beside a crooked house. Tomorrow would determine whether that little boy grew up with grandparents who protected him, or parents who taught him that family loyalty could be bought and sold. David's voice echoed from 4 years ago. Promise me you will always take care of Liam. I intended to keep that promise. Monday morning arrived gray and cold. I slept little that night, but when Caleb arrived at 9:45 with his notary seal and journal, I felt completely prepared. Good morning, Evelyn. Beautiful home office, he said, arranging his materials on the side table. This should be straightforward. Julia knocked precisely at 10, carrying her banker's portfolio. Morning, Evelyn. Ready for that portfolio review? More ready than you know, I replied, positioning myself behind my desk as footsteps approached the front door. Chloe and Mark entered with confident smiles and their leather document case. They paused when they saw Caleb and Julia, but Mark recovered quickly. How thoughtful of you to arrange professional assistance, he said smoothly. This will make everything so much more official. Indeed it will, I replied, my voice carrying none of yesterday's confused frailty. Please, everyone, take a seat. Chloe settled into the chair across from my desk, still smiling. Mom, you sound much better today. More like your old self. Exactly like my old self. Sharp, observant, capable. I leaned forward, meeting her eyes directly, which is why I need to tell you something before we sign any documents. Mark's pen stopped moving across his checklist. Evelyn, what is wrong? Nothing is wrong with me, Mark, but I'm completely aware of your plan. The silence stretched like a taut wire. Chloe's smile faltered. Mom, what plan? We are here to help you. I know about your visit to Julia's bank last Tuesday. I know about the guardianship procedures you researched. I know about the mental competency evaluations you plan to arrange. Chloe's face drained of color. Mark's carefully controlled expression cracked for just a moment before he attempted damage control. Evelyn, you are confused. We visited the bank about our own financial planning. Julia, I interrupted, turning to my friend. Would you mind sharing what they discussed during their Tuesday afternoon appointment? Julia cleared her throat professionally. They asked detailed questions about conservatorship procedures, documentation requirements for declaring someone mentally incompetent, and expedited court processes for emergency financial management. Caleb looked up from his notary journal, suddenly alert. Madam Price, are you saying these power of attorney documents were prepared under false pretenses? I am saying they planned to have me declared incompetent so they could steal everything I have worked 41 years to build. Chloe found her voice, though it came out strangled. Mom, we were worried about you. Yesterday you seemed so confused. Yesterday I was performing. Today you're seeing who I really am. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the documentation I'd prepared. 247 transactions over 4 years, $70,000 in support payments, every mortgage payment, every car repair, every private school tuition bill, all documented. Mark leaned forward, desperation creeping into his voice. Those were legitimate family expenses, conditioning payments, training me to say yes to increasingly larger amounts until I would have agreed to sign away my independence. I looked directly at him. You researched exactly how to have me institutionalized while you divided my assets. Caleb set down his pen. This is highly irregular. I need to understand the full situation before notarizing anything. The full situation, I continued, is that my daughter and son-in-law spent weeks researching legal procedures to steal my money, consulted with lawyers about guardianship processes, and planned to have me declared mentally incompetent based on fabricated evidence of confusion. Chloe's hands shook as she gripped the armrests of her chair. We just thought you might need help managing things. Help managing a net worth of $2.3 million plus 3 rental properties? My voice hardened. Help that required consulting attorneys about emergency conservatorship procedures. Mark stood abruptly. You are twisting everything. We love you. Love doesn't involve conspiracy, Mark. Love doesn't involve researching how to steal someone's independence while they are still healthy and competent. Julia spoke quietly. Evelyn, the questions they asked were very specific. They knew legal terminology that most families never encounter unless they are planning something significant. Caleb nodded grimly. In my experience, legitimate family financial planning does not require research into mental competency evaluations. The room fell silent except for Chloe's labored breathing. She looked at me with something approaching recognition, perhaps seeing for the first time the businesswomen who'd built the wealth they'd tried to steal. What happens now? She whispered. I stood feeling every year of my age, but also every ounce of my accumulated wisdom and experience. Now we discuss consequences. Consequences? I repeated, opening my desk drawer to retrieve the legal documents I had prepared over the weekend. I am changing my will immediately. My estate will go into an educational trust for Liam, accessible when he turns 21. Chloe leaned forward desperately. Mom, please, we made mistakes, but we can fix this. The trust will provide for his college education, graduate school if he chooses, and startup funds for whatever career path he selects. I spread the new will documents across my desk. Caleb, I need these witnessed and notarized. Mark's voice cracked slightly. Evelyn, you can't do this to your own family. I'm protecting my family, I replied firmly. From parents who were willing to steal her grandmother's independence to fund their lifestyle. Caleb examined the documents professionally. Madam Price, these terms are quite specific. There are conditions attached. If Chloe and Mark formally renounce all claims to my estate and demonstrate genuine change over the next year, I'll reconsider, but they must prove they have become the parents Liam deserves. Julia nodded approvingly as she witnessed my signature. The educational trust structure is excellent. He will have every opportunity you never got to provide directly. Chloe buried her face in her hands. What does genuine change mean? How do we prove that? By getting jobs that actually support your family instead of depending on me. By prioritizing Liam's happiness over your own financial desires. By showing me that my grandson matters more to you than my bank account. Mark stood abruptly, his composure finally cracking completely. How are we supposed to live without your support? The same way millions of other families do. Through honest work and responsible spending, the mortgage assistance ends today. The car payments stop immediately. You are both adults with college degrees. Figure it out. Caleb finished notarizing the documents with practiced efficiency. Everything is legally binding now. Madam Price, you should keep these in a secure location. My attorney will have copies by this afternoon, I assured him. After Caleb and Julia departed with handshakes and promises of discretion, the three of us sat in uncomfortable silence. Chloe looked broken. Mark appeared to be calculating survival strategies. Is there anything else you want to say? I asked. Chloe met my eyes for the first time since the revelation began. I am sorry, Mom. I know that does not fix anything, but I am genuinely sorry. Mark said nothing, which told me everything about his priorities. Words are cheap, Chloe. Actions over the next year will determine whether this family has a future together. 3 hours later, Liam knocked on my door, his school backpack still slung over his shoulder. Grandma Mommy said, "Yo, you wanted to see me?" I knelt to his eye level, just as I had in the hallway 2 days ago. Come sit with me, sweetheart. We need to talk about some grown-up things. She settled beside me on the couch, his 9-year-old wisdom already sensing something serious. Is this about what I told you? Partly. Your mommy and daddy made some bad choices about money, and there have to be consequences, but none of this changes how much I love you. Are they in trouble? They have to learn to take better care of themselves and you. But Liam, I want you to know that your future is completely safe. I have made special arrangements to make sure you can go to any college you want, study anything that interests you. His eyes brightened slightly. Even veterinary school, that is really expensive, especially veterinary school. And if you change your mind and want to be an engineer or a teacher or start your own business, there will be money for that too. What about mommy and daddy? They're going to work very hard to become better parents. And if they succeed, our family might be able to heal from this hurt. But even if they don't, you and I will always have each other. He hugged me tightly, and I felt David's presence in that embrace. 3 generations of love continuing despite betrayal and broken trust. Can we look at college brochures? Liam asked. I want to see what veterinary schools look like. Absolutely, I smiled, reaching for my laptop. We have all the time in the world to plan your future. Outside, spring was turning to summer, and David's roses were finally beginning to bloom. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.